It's showing up.
Okay. Hey everybody, this is Heather with Ghost Education 101. Sorry we're for a few minutes late. I was having trouble getting my Zoom to sync with Facebook. But we are here today and we are excited to be going over paranormal profiling. We have Martha Hazzard Decker here with us. She's the author of Paranormal Profiling. She has been involved in investigating paranormal activity since 1999. She retired in 2007 from law enforcement as Assistant Chief of Police, negotiator, detective, and instructor, and decided to return to her passions, which were writing and photography. She has a number of years of experience as a writer. She received first place award for specialty reporting by the Associated Press and is working on other books and articles. She is also the founder of East Texas Paranormal. She has done so many amazing things that I cannot wait for you guys to learn more from her. But first, I want to say hi to Linda. She's joining us. She's going to be monitoring the comments for us. So Linda, say hi to everybody and tell us your group and a little information about you.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Glad to be here. I am with Pit Crew of Oklahoma, and we've been together for over 12 years. Just happy to be here tonight and ready to help.
Well, thank you for joining us. And again, like I said, I'm Heather. I'm actually the founder of Exploration Paranormal out here in Las Vegas, and I have more than 30 years experience in the paranormal. But I know I'm going to learn a lot tonight from Martha. So go ahead, Martha. It's all yours.
Oh, gee, thank you. Well, I guess I have around 30 years myself. And my team I founded after I retired from law enforcement, East Texas Paranormal, back in 2007. But I had been doing stuff long before that. So, do you want me to go into my presentation now?
Yeah, go right ahead. It's all yours.
Okay. Okay, let's go. Let's see if it worked. I changed my volume and it said it did something, so hopefully it hasn't messed anything up.
Yeah. And I gave you permission to share, so it should do a screen share.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, good. And I just figured out that I'll do it this way instead of the full screen, because when I get the full screen on this like a slideshow, I was messing up. So
whatever works for you.
So this is what it's about: paranormal forensic interviews. I'm taking my law enforcement techniques and apply them to paranormal investigations, the investigations and the interviews. But the interviews are the main thing I'm going to focus on, because every team has their own way of investigating. But if you can investigate like it's crime scene, that will make a big difference in what with as far as going and reviewing possible evidence and everything. So there's my contact information, some of it, and of course you can find me here on Facebook. I'm going to try starting with this video. It's just a few minutes, but it actually has a lot to do with interviewing somebody, and this is also on showing you how to look for signs of deception. Fingers crossed that it works. The audio, and I didn't screw it up. Let's see here. Okay, I'm just going to show part of that, but that is really important when it goes to interviewing somebody. And all of us older people kind of remember Dragnet. And a lot of us remember this episode. And this is where when you go to interview somebody before you do an investigation, you know, you go in and you're looking for just the facts. And the facts are very important. And here's a sampling of some of the things that you should take with you to do the interview. You know, something to take notes. I go in and we go with generally there's two of us. You know, part of that's for Steve, but that's also so that one person can take notes while the other's doing the interview, and looking at the person's body language, their demeanor, all those sort of things, and they're building a rapport with them. And I have the video recorder and the voice recorder because I'll set up both of them and just let them run, because when I go, I'm going to do an interview. I'm not going to do a brief interview and then investigate. The investigate's a whole separate thing. And that's after anything that's been picked up that night. You know, you want to, or afternoon, your recorder and your video, you want to go back and review and see if you have anything on there. Camera, we take the camera and we do base photos when we're doing it. Well, I'll go around room to room and get shots, multiple shots in all the rooms, because it could be a week, it could be a couple of months before you actually go and go do an investigation. And this gives you a base. The same thing with the EMF, you look for a base then. And then when you go back in to do an investigation, you're doing the same thing. You're going through and taking it, but then you have something to compare it to from when you were there the last time. And the waiver is very important to me and to my team. Is we have a waiver that we have the family sign during the interview. We don't wait for an investigation, because a lot of times we actually don't even do investigation, or, you know, it's not needed. But the waiver gives the potential client the opportunity to decide. It's their house. I do you know, it's going to be a private residence. It's going to be a privately owned business when I'm doing the bulk of my interview with the interviews and then the investigations. But the client gets to decide whether anything is available for the public, whether anything can be put on social media. And, you know, some people don't want anything. Some could care less. Some of them are okay as long as, you know, the location or the family isn't identified. And then we give them a copy of the same thing. And it doesn't just protect the client, it protects the team that's going in too, because they have a copy. If somebody had signed something that said you can show it wherever you want to, however you want to, and then it ends up maybe on a TV show or just Facebook or anything like that, and the family goes, wait a minute, we didn't give you permission, you have it in writing. And the same applies to them. If they told you nothing can go out, you may get sued. You may find yourself in court. So it actually works for both people, you know, both parties on that.
Before you go on, I do have a quick question for
Sure.
you. You mentioned that, you know, the interview could be weeks or months before the actual investigation. Is there a time frame that you recommend people wait, or could they do the interview and then go right into the investigation? Or do you have any tips on like timelines?
Well, it's very, very rare that I've gone and done an interview and then right into the investigation, because that gives you no time to review your recorders in your video. You don't, you know if there was even anything picked up. There's been an occasion where I've had an in-depth interview on the phone, which really doesn't take the place unless there's a big distance. And then it's like, it's going to be a very lengthy interview. You were talking about at least an hour probably to do that. One of the things I have the person who contacts me do is I require that they send me an email. And in that email, they put down details of what's going on. They have their name, their phone number, and their full physical address. And that gives me something to pass on the information to other people that are going to be going with me. It also works for me because 9 times out of 10, I'm out on the road or something. My vehicle's my office for one of my day jobs. So I'm, rarely anywhere that I can write anything down, and I'm not going to remember everything. And that way I don't have to repeat it over and over to whoever I'm going with. Uh, and I have one specific place everything goes. Otherwise, it's going to Messenger, it's going to text message, it's going to maybe 1 or 2 or 3 different, emails. So trying to track it all down is just, it doesn't happen. And the time really depends on when you're available. If you decide to do an investigation with a family, it's going to depend on what time you and your team are available, but it's also going to depend on the family as well. So that's kind of as far as your time frame. It just, happens based on what you and your client determine. And I had some that it's been a year. I've had some that I go the very next week or 3 or 4 days later. I usually will move faster when children are involved. So it's just, case by case. There really isn't any set time.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. One of the first things I ask people, and I usually ask them this when they contact me by phone, is do they watch paranormal shows? And I ask them that question because I have found that the majority of the time when they say, I watch all of the shows, that there really hasn't necessarily been anything paranormal going on. But because they watch all the shows, they hear a creak or something, they just go straight to paranormal. And they don't even think about other things that could cause that. So that's, that can be a very important question. There's there's one guy in Texas that I don't even remember where he lives now, but he came up to one of the conferences I was at years ago, and he talked to almost every team that was there, and there were quite a few. And he never got to my team. We were in the very back, but he called me, and his whole deal was he has these old antique toy soldiers, the little metal toy soldiers, and he has them on a shelf, and they move. And so he's thinking there's something paranormal. They move. So after talking to him, after digging into it with him, and him sending me a lot of detail, like he keeps the log and everything, I asked him, and then he said that he started carrying them around with him, and then of course they didn't move. Then he moved them to another shelf, and they stayed in place. And then he put them back on the other shelf, and he came back home from work one day, and they were all pointing in the same way towards his propane tank that had a leak in it. And it's like, do you think they did it? And it's like, probably not. And so the next questions you ask, because you're not going there to determine that it is paranormal, you're trying to rule out everything that you can think of, natural causes, before you even go there for an investigation. So the questions were, is your house pier and beam? Is it on a slab? Where is your cabinet sitting? Is it by a door? Or do you live near a street where 18-wheelers, big trucks go down? All these things for vibrations, simply because I have the same thing, or I had, with a shelf that was by the front door. And so about once a year, I'd move everything back because the vibrations, and I'm on slab, but just the vibrations of the door opening and shutting through the year would move them a little bit. And, and that wasn't what the problem was with that. He just needed to move them, or just, understand that it was vibrations. And that is, once I told him that and he went and looked, he realized that that's what it was. There was no paranormal to it. And so that's one of the reasons to ask that. I ask them, about what they believe in the paranormal, and of course, what they think is going on. Like I talked about him and his toy soldiers, any occult practices, Ouija boards, everything like that. You just ask them all about their paranormal, supernatural beliefs, and that kind of helps you determine whether things are as they say they are, or are they making more of things. um, I had one that I went to because I do a lot of what could be potentially serious cases. And I had one that somebody called from Fort Worth area. And she said that her husband was possessed, and that he would do a lot of things like in his sleep, shoot her the finger, he gets pulled out of bed, all kinds of weird stuff. And so she tells me that that they had lived with his mother, and she was big into voodoo, and they had lived in New Orleans and hadn't been up in Fort Worth for a really long time, but he pretty much grew up in New Orleans. He had been born in Ireland, and his mother was, they practiced voodoo over there as well. And then they got more into the hoodoo. And I actually, when I met them to interview him, I met him at a park by where they stayed, because the story was she got a call or a text and said, you need to go home now. And his sister, they had moved out of the house, and the mother hadn't want them to do that because the mother was expecting her son and daughter to follow after her. And they had been trained and had been involved in all the different ceremonies all their life. And she wasn't happy with them doing that. And she had made a comment to him about, I cleaned your brush, and she used a lot of hair. She did a lot of work, was a lot of hoodoo in there with her too. She was more, she was dark, not light. And so she got that text. Then the guy's sister, her boyfriend, got the same thing. And when the boyfriend went over there, he found her in the bathtub, like she had tried to commit suicide and cut her wrists. And when the girl I talked to got home, he had actually tried to hang himself with a belt in the bathroom with a shower rack. And he actually did go to the hospital, and he was checked and everything. And they, neither one of them had any recollection, which is another reason why I chose to interview them not at the house, because if there's something negative that's attached to them, it's going to go with them. They don't have to be at home. And they told me all kinds of crazy stuff about ceremonies that their mother had done, possibly murdering some people, and sexual abuse. Both him and his sister had been sexually abused, and the stepfather was actually in prison in Louisiana. And that's part of the reason why they left. Now, they were 20 and 21, and he was still getting abused by his mother. But they had a 12-year-old daughter or sister that was left with mother. And I got a lot of information from them. I tried to get more. I contacted the police department in New Orleans and about some possible missing people or some people that came up dead. I contacted people about the 12-year-old, and the house that they had lived in was actually like 2 blocks from the park. So I went by the house before we left. Tammy Bricky, which is one of the people that works with me on this stuff, we rode over by the house. I wasn't going to make contact with her, but I wanted to see, and she'd already moved out. But I feel like they're all back together again. So you never know what you're going to go into. And that one kind of took me, because that one I didn't pick up anything there, but I felt like there was definitely some kind of stuff going on. And that's been going on while. I tried to contact the police department. And you never know when you do these who you may end up having to contact after you talk to somebody. Let's see. Okay, this one is it's important. Just listen to what the guy says and just follow his instructions, and then we'll talk about it afterwards. There we go. Now, if somebody that has seen it and everybody can see their answers or something, just shh until we're done with this. I saw this video and I was happy when I found it, because I can't tell you how many law enforcement trainings I went to where we watched this video. Okay. Did either one of you two see the gorilla?
I did, but I've
No?
seen this video before.
Okay. So you did, but yeah, so you get what where I'm going with this as far as your observation skills.
Ah,
So that's the whole point of that one, is your observation skills, especially if you're interviewing somebody and you're in their space, you're in their house. It's another reason why you want to take somebody with you, because you don't know who that person is. You don't know anything about that person. You don't even know if they're telling you the truth. So it's very important to pay attention to your surroundings. And same thing, and you should do that every day. Just really pay attention to your surroundings. There was one guy that I talked to, and I actually have something on my phone with his phone number that'll notify me that it's him, and don't answer the phone. He has a lot of mental problems. He has spoken to a number of the Texas paranormal teams. He lives down around Beaumont somewhere. He's in his 20s. He lives with parents, and he's in and out of mental hospitals. And he believes that, like a lot of other people that do have mental issues, that there's demons in the house. And he talks about his demons, and he wants somebody to come out, but he wants them to come to the house when his parents are gone, and he is looking for a lone female investigator to come to his house. And of course, my response to him was, we don't go anywhere for an investigation without the permission of the property owner. So, that was simple for us to do that, but he'll still call occasionally, and he still makes the rounds trying to find somebody. And you just really have to pay attention. This is something that's important to, especially with children too, is to build that rapport with them. But you do this because you want the client to know that you're there for the client, and that you're not there to, it's not a game. The person that contacts you from their private home looking for help isn't looking for a team to come in, have their jollies, run around, try to get some stuff for them, and then they run out and just leave the client there. I had somebody that did that. There's somebody out in Palestine that we're going to go back out and do a cleansing of the house. But after she had contacted me, somebody else on internet that came to the house, some young guy, and she had had a 12-year-old and a 16-year-old at the house. They moved down from New York. They are in a like a Civil War house or so, somewhere around there. It's at least 100 years old. We're not sure how much older than that. It's not in the best part of town. The husband's a truck driver, so it's mom, and actually there were 3 kids there. The other one is an adult, and he left because he actually physically attacked her, and he'd never done anything like that before. The 2 boys had to pull him off of her. So this guy came in, and everybody's sleeping in the living room. Nobody is sleeping in any of the bedrooms. They've seen a child, they've seen an old woman, they've seen a very tall shadow figure, and they're just, there's no TV. So they're just really super isolated as it is, coming to Palestine. And this guy had come in, and he came in, he provoked, he called out Satan, he told her, because she was having what I think is she was just having sleep paralysis. And he told her that was a demon, that was over on top of her, holding her down, and saying all these kind of things to the family, totally scared the kids to death. And then he leaves. And activity, from when I talked to her, she said it actually picked up quite a bit after he left. So it's really important not to go into somebody's house like that, and be cognizant of the children around and how you're talking if children are there, because they actually, after we left, Vicki Higgin and I went over there, and Vicki's part of my team too. And we did the interview, and we walked around, we got the pictures, and we talked with them, and everything eased up for about a month or so. Just nothing was there. It was gone. And that, for whatever reason, that happens a lot when I talk to somebody or something. The kids went back to sharing a bedroom. So they were back in a bedroom. Mom and dad had gone back into a bedroom. And the boys are still sharing a bedroom. They haven't all gone back into the living room, but some of the stuff, but not really scary has started back up, but just that there's activity. But I think with this family is sensitive, and they've always had activity. They had activity where they lived in New York, and they have activity down here, but it's different activity. So we're still working on that location, trying to find out information, which is why I like to get the full physical address of the location before I even go, so I can try to do some research for that. Does anybody have any questions yet?
Nope, not yet.
Okay. If you set a time to be at somebody's house, it's important to be there at that time, or if you're going to be late or not go, to call them and let them know. Don't be constantly looking at your phone and texting when you're trying to interview somebody, because that makes that person feel completely unimportant, like you just don't even really care about them, and you want them to open up and tell you things when you ask questions. You don't want them to shut down. You want them to open up more. Well, like I just said, in fact, make sure if they have a radio on, ask to turn the radio off, ask to turn the TV off, because even if it's muted, their eyes are going to be going to that TV. They can't help it. And with the same thing with the children. And with the children, you'd want to try to interview them separately in another room where it's not totally shut off from where like the parents are, but trying to keep them over into another room helps a lot when you're interviewing them. It makes them feel a little more comfortable. And I'm not sure if I have any children if I went here. If not, I'll talk about it too in a little bit. I don't know, because I have 2 different presentations, the general, and I have one on children. Well, here, this is Tammy Bricky, and this was one I did a while back, where actually grandma and granddaughter are very sensitive. They see things all the time. They just have never even tried to communicate with it. It's like their house is a way station. And it's one of the houses, if you get to somebody's house, and that was one of them, and you're doing your interview, and all of a sudden you realize there's like little baby roaches everywhere and they're crawling into your equipment bag or anything like that. uh try to I tried to leave there as quickly as I could, but politely. And because they're both sensitive, grandma just looked at me. She knew something was up, and I just I couldn't tell her that that's what it was. I didn't want to be rude, but that equipment bag, I emptied it out when I got home, and I kept that bag and some of the equipment out on the back porch for like 2 weeks before I ever brought it into the house. So you don't always know what you're going into. Uh, so when you get to the interview part, let them tell their story. And especially with children too, a lot of this is the same. You ask them what's happening, you listen to what they're saying, somebody's taking notes, but you're also recording it. And once they tell you the whole, what they feel like is the whole story, or if they kind of stop and hesitate, just let it be quiet for a minute, give them a chance. A lot of times they are going to start talking again. And once they've kind of done with what they were saying, then you can go over what they said. And that's the time to ask them questions on the and go over detail. And by broad statements, ask them to define them. Say somebody says, "Oh, it's a mean ghost." Well, that's where you'd say, "Well, what do you mean by mean?" Because everybody has different versions of that. If they say they cuss at me, well, what do they say? It's okay to tell me what they say. A good example of that was back when I was on patrol as a police officer. I was pumping gas at the station that we used, and this older lady came up to me. There's a lot of retirement people over here. I'm out on Cedar Creek Lake, over about 60 miles southeast of Dallas. And she starts telling me this story about some vandalism that had occurred at her house, and she saw who did it, and it had been like 2 weeks earlier. And she didn't tell me because a lot of times they say, "Well, we don't want to bother you," even though you would say, "Well, that's that's part of my job." So I'm asking her to describe them, and she goes, "Well, there was a couple of young guys." So my version of young guys would be late teens, maybe early 20s. And so I asked her, "So what, about how old when you say young guys?" And she looked at me and she says, "About 50 or so." 50 isn't a young guy to me, but she was in her 80s. So that was a young guy. So it's always good to go over stuff and make sure that you're on the same page with them when it comes to detail about anything. I also always tell them when they initially contact me, I ask if they are like using a journal for events. And if not, I tell them to start a journal and put in there, who, what, where, when, how, time of day, who was there to see it, who, or who experienced it, what day was it, what was the weather like, all those kind of things. Put that in there, because if nothing else, when you go, that may help you determine if there's some sort of pattern. Maybe they didn't realize, well, it happens at 5 o'clock every day, or it happens at 8 in the morning or at midnight. It helps you when it comes time to, if you do an investigation, to see what's going on. It's real important to remain objective when you talk to somebody. And I tell everybody, leave your beliefs in your car when you go in, because they may have a different belief system than you. And you're trying to go in and help somebody is usually why you're there. If you're doing this type of an interview, you want to help. You don't want them to feel like, well, you don't approve of them. You don't approve of their lifestyle. They're not good enough. So, it's very important to just go in unbiased and ensure confidentiality. I know of some people who are friends of mine who had worked with some teams and had a lot of stuff going on. And when you're doing an interview with somebody, you're asking them really personal questions and that, you know, they may not be comfortable answering. So that's why this is so important, is for them to feel like they can trust you and for you to ensure the confidentiality of what they're telling you. And I've known people who, for whatever reason, say somebody with a team that was working with them or the individual working with them got mad at them for whatever reason or something. There was some kind of a falling out. And the next thing you know, they've gone and they've blasted the emails uh, in articles across social media that were meant to be confidential to that person only. And, you know, that's also a good way to get sued too by somebody. And, you know, you don't want to do that. Really don't want to do that to anybody. And let's see. Okay. We're going with some of the lie detector stuff here. We'll watch part of this video. These are all videos. This is the presentation that I do when I go speak at conferences all the time. If I'm talking about interviews in general, this is what I use. And these are the videos that I play.
People on the live feed are saying they're not hearing any sound.
They're not hearing the sound on this one.
That's what they're saying, yes.
Oh, well, I don't know how to fix that.
Okay.
So I guess we won't play that one, but they heard the others. I don't know why they didn't hear, and I don't know what to do to fix that. Sorry. But basically, you know, this is, you can get onto YouTube and find different videos on what to do, because when you're interviewing somebody, this is one of the things that you're looking for is, are they telling you the truth? Some people will say to me, people lie. And let's see if it'll work now. I turned this down for me. Let me see what happens. If they can't hear, let us know.
Not hearing it.
Yeah, I'm not hearing it either anymore.
Okay, well, we'll just forget that. He's saying, you know, his typical thing about, I did not have sex with Monica Lewinsky. And and it goes on, but it talks about how he said it in the eyes and everything. But the other thing is too, people wonder, or they're surprised that people would lie when you go interview them. Sometimes people lie. Sometimes people just want attention. Some people want to be on TV. And some people may have a commercial business and they may want to be able to say, so-and-so team declares us paranormal. For example, Catfish Plantation in Waxahachie, Texas is well known for being haunted. And it's been on a number of TV shows. Dallas area Paranormal Society, DAPS, occasionally does ghost investigations open to the public. there. They were doing them like once a month. I don't know about how they're doing it, what they're doing right now. But this is something that, the business has been through different owners and they've been doing this. And it's one that is, but so you may have somebody with a business that wants the same type notoriety so that they can, get more business. Or somebody may just want to be on TV with their, my ghost story or something and have their little 15 minutes in fame. So to be a reputable individual team, you really have to pay attention to those type things and not fall for them. The other thing too, when you're observing people, is watching their demeanor, uh, especially with kids sometimes. But their demeanor may change. You also, or you can't go by the guidelines that a lot of people think of, like, oh, do they look up to the left or do they look up to the right, so they must be lying. That's just one indicator, and that one indicator only works if the person is left-handed or right-handed, because left-handed people will look in the opposite direction of a right-handed person. So it's one of the small indicators. I don't even use that. I don't even use that at all when I do that. Let's see here. What do we have next? We're getting into the verbal communication with people. It's important to be aware of other people's cultures and how they do things that may be different how you do things. For just any kind of example, for some cultures, it's very inappropriate or very rude to look eye to eye to somebody. Sometimes so you need to be aware of things like that. It doesn't hurt to find out a little bit about the individuals or the family where you're going for that purpose. Some of them you don't. There's just all sorts of things. Maybe you don't get too close to them, but every culture has different things. There's some of them that when you show up, and we don't really run into this, you don't go knock on the door, you stay outside and you honk, and then you wait for them to come and wave you on, that you're welcome there. So it's important to just know different things like that and what they mean, because something may mean one thing to you that means another thing to them. Here we have I tell you, if somebody is really lying and you think that they're really not, and you're starting to believe everything they say, you may find out when you start asking them more questions and stuff, but the relaxed and leaning inward shows interest. Criminals know how to do that all the time. They will buddy you. They'll do it out on the street while you may be picking your pocket or something, and trying to disarm you and make you think, oh, this is a nice person. But it also means just what it says, that if they're relaxed, sometimes their hands are open and they're leaning forward, that they're interested. A lot of times if they're leaning back and their arms are crossed and everything, that right there says that you're losing them, that they're just either don't want to be there or they just don't want to talk, unless you're somebody like me that you do that you sit with your arms crossed or you stand with them crossed, because that makes my shoulders feel better. And the responses to their statements is where you go on. You can say things like, and then what happened? And then what happened? Something as simple as that to, keep them talking about something. And we already talked about just giving them a chance to continue talking by just being quiet and listening. Also, by being quiet and listening, you're listening to your surroundings as well. And be sure when you go in the house to actually, look around your surroundings when you get in there. Look around if you're in the living room. What do they have there? What kind of books? What kind of photos? Pay attention to all that, because that'll give you a lot of clues about them. And this isn't another thing with the use of space. The best interview distance is about 5 to 8 feet. Now, if I was interrogating somebody or I really felt like they might be lying, I would use one of the old interview interrogation techniques where you get in where you're almost like knee to knee, you're really close, and it puts you into their space. And you're doing that on purpose because you're trying to get them to just, if nothing else, if they're making up stuff, just kind of let you know that that's what they were doing. And give them the opportunity to explain everything and save face, so to speak. Now we talked about the postures here. Said I don't know if I have the children on here, but we can go into those at the end. And here's where you look for things, especially if they're telling lies, because if you like to play poker, to look for tells. That's why you see a lot of poker players with sunglasses on. They don't want people to see what's going on with their eyes. But same thing when you're looking at somebody and interviewing them and you're looking for demeanor, you're also looking for their tells. There's one guy I knew, a young officer I knew, that you knew every time that he was not telling the truth, because as soon as you asked him something, he's like a little kid. It's like there was somebody in down there in his foot that has a string, and he's pulling the string down because the guy's head would automatically go down every time he didn't tell the truth. So you kind of watch that and you learn about things like that. There was one family that I went to. The child was autistic, and she was about 9 years old. And I got a call from the grandmother about demons in the house, and demons or negative entities were coming to the house. They had a name for this one guy. He came to the house. He would beat her up, the 9-year-old, and sometimes he would bring his friends and they'd like gang beat her up. So during the interview, she was a fairly high functioning autistic child, but I noticed that she would start like tapping her head with her finger like that when she's trying to recall something like she's supposed to say. And then when she was having a particularly difficult time, she'd start kind of putting her head on her mother's, doing like this to her mother's shoulder and doing this. And so I knew that something was up with that she was trying to remember something. So I asked her if she liked to draw. And I had her go get, one of the things I did is I had her draw a picture of the guy that's coming over. And she drew a picture. She had said it was bad because black is bad. You see a black shadow, black is bad. And when she drew a picture of him, he was brown. And so that contradicted. And then another question I asked her was, is he here now? And right away she says, yes. And I go, well, can you point to where he is? And she was doing a lot of this and banging on her, kind of, on her mother. And after about 1 to 2 minutes, which was a long time, she pointed over somewhere, which told me that she wasn't seeing anything. She was trying to remember what she was supposed to do. And I had actually brought a friend of mine, detective. He's working with the police department. He's a detective. And I started bringing him into things that may be serious because of some of his abilities that he has, that he had just discovered like, a year before that or so. And so we were working with that. And grandmother had also told me that they see beings outside, little creatures that are going around and climbing and that they were, non-human entities type thing. So Vicky stayed in the house because Vicky was with us and talking to grandmother and talking to the mother. And so he and I go outside, we go in the back. We were there in the evening because we did this after he got off work. Normally I'll go in the daytime if I can for interviews, just so I can see everything better. And when we get out back, there's a big bright light behind their property, and it's all clear in one area because the water company has some things back there, and then it's woods. Well, so we could see all the bushes and the trees in the back where she claims there's all these creatures. They had creatures back there, but they were hogs. They were feral hogs that were digging the heck out of everything. So when we go in and we tell her, we found out what that was. There's no creatures out there that are, no supernatural stuff. It's just hogs. Well, then they wanted to make it be something else. And talking to them some more, we have one thing the three together is they all watch Ghost Adventures. And that's where the 9-year-old was picking up information about, if it's black, it's a demon and everything. So we had some, did some counseling on age appropriate TV for the 9-year-old, especially, 9-year-old autistic child. We've also discovered that every call we got was from a house with autistic children. And the bulk of them were also severe hoarding houses. And we have realized that if somebody is a severe hoarder, the negativity from hoarding is making an impact on just the energy in the home. So you just really have to do kind of a lot of detective work even while you're, interviewing somebody. But a lot of times people, like I say there, they may say everything's okay, but they're crying or shaking their head no when they're saying yes. And so you have to pay attention to all of these things. That's why it's good if you can have somebody there taking notes and taking good notes, so you can go back and clarify some of the things they said. And here's the thing on the eye contact, especially. Okay, my phone went weird. Talking about phones. Thought I had everything turned off. When you start asking questions that are very personal, that's when you especially kind of avoid direct eye contact. You can look towards them and stuff because you don't want to be looking off around the corner. But anything that's really going to embarrass them, you want to kind of avoid the eye contact with them on that. And some of the things that you want to do if you decide that you're going to investigate is to try to corroborate their story. So you ask about other people that have witnessed things and maybe talk to them. You can talk to the neighbors. And of course, now when you go talk to a neighbor, you don't go and blurt out everything that they're saying. You just kind of ask the neighbors and the former owners, have you ever noticed anything unusual or odd, coming over, coming from that house? And so you do that. You leave it very generic. But you do contact any witnesses they might have as well. Let's see here. And you ask about their beliefs that may play in there. It may not. It may be something like a jinn if there's something there. It may not be a ghost. It may not be a demon. It could be a jinn. You ask about their criminal history. And that's important to ask about too. And this is getting into the personal questions because, I mean, you can do a check. You can, depending on what you have available for you, you can do somewhat of a check. But, they say when you're doing a social history is asking about all the other things. The criminal history could have a lot to play on if they're doing drugs. You're not there to judge them. That's why they need to know. You're not there to judge. If they're doing drugs, let them tell you. And the drugs may be illegal, prescribed drugs. But it's important to kind of know what anything we're not judging them on any of those, and help you come up with an informed decision about what is or isn't going on. Ask them about their medical history, ask them history. For example, with a mental history, mention, uh, mention that they're, have anything mental. They need to know that it's okay, that because they're schizophrenic, you're not going to automatically leave them, because they may have something going on, but then again, it could be part of the schizophrenia that's happening. For example, when I worked for the state, I went with somebody over to a house, went with a social worker to somebody's house, and the lady is not supposed to be alone with her children or anything like that. And when we go in, notice in the apartment's very clean, but in the kitchen, which you have to pass through to go into the living room, there was a huge pot, like a big old canning pot, that was on the stove, and it was full of water and it was boiling. And there wasn't anything else. It's not like they were going to cook foods, they weren't going to sterilize anything. It was just a big old huge pot of boiling water. So is going through the social history and asking about who lives there and all these questions about medical and mental and all that stuff I talked about. She said she was schizophrenic, and then the social worker went on to the next question, but I went back to that one and I asked her, do you hear voices? And she said that she did hear voices. So my next question was, are you hearing voices now? And she said she was. So the next question is, well, what are the voices saying, or what are they telling you to do? The reply was, they're telling me to boil a pot of water and pour it on myself. And if that question had never been asked, who knows what would have happened. So you get into really detailed stuff when you interview children. I'm not sure if it's on there, so I'm just going to talk. You get into trying to go through truth and lie and see if they understand the difference. And most of the time they do, but depending on their age. And sometimes I had a 7-year-old once tell me she didn't know the difference. So that's where you do some things to ask them. For example, you could say, are you wearing a purple if I say you're wearing a purple shirt today, is that true, or is it made up? And they're actually wearing a blue shirt, and they'd say, well, that's not true. Then I said, well, if I said you're wearing a blue shirt, is that true, or is it not? And they say, well, it's true because I'm wearing one. So you ask questions like that when you're trying to determine that. Another good thing to ask children in the interview is if they know why you're there. And if their parents said anything to them, and if they say that they know why, ask them why. Well, why am I here? What did your parents say? What did they tell you to say? So you're trying to determine if they're being truthful with you that way, or if the parents had some ulterior motive. I had a set of people that were going to an advocacy center for a forensic interview. And all the kids I noticed when they came in there had money in their hands. And so that was one of the things the interviewer asked them is, what was the deal with the money? And they said that they were given that and they were supposed to say something. And they would, and that's why they had the money. They were told why, and this is what we're supposed to say. And we got $5 each or something. So you go through that. And another thing to ask children is, you will ask adults this, but it's important with children, is ask them who lives in the house, and put down, make a note of everybody they say that lives in the house, and then go back and ask them who each person is, because it's possible that they could mention somebody who is not living in the house. If there's possible activity, maybe they've been communicating with some spirit, like, the parents thought, well, this was just, at one time thought it was just imaginary friend. So that's a good way to find out something like that, is just ask them who lives in the house and who they are. And when it comes to children, it's very important to ask them open-ended questions, not closed questions, such as, like, well, what do they look like? What did he look like? How was he dressed? And they're not yes, no. You don't want to ask that many yes, no questions. You want them to say they were wearing a hat, or they had long, or they, carrying a purse, or whatever it is like that. And then you go back and go, well, what kind of hat did they have on? Then you can ask a little bit more detailed question, but keep everything very open when you're talking to children, because the children want to please. And so they're going to try to say something, answer your question to what they think you may want to hear. Another thing I also tell them is that there's no right or wrong answers. If they don't have an answer, they don't know an answer, it's okay. Just say, I don't know. And I tell them that they're not in any kind of trouble or anything. And try to relax them when you're building your rapport with them. And that, we went over that. Does anybody have any questions?
Not yet, but I have a question, Martha, going back to the drug use.
Right.
As a investigative team, I have a police chief and a doctor and a nurse on my team. If we go into an interview and somebody openly admits to using hardcore drugs, such as meth or heroin or stuff like that, what position does that put us in? Like, from a legal standpoint, are they, given the types of people that's on my team, a chief of police, a doctor, a nurse?
Well, maybe you don't take the chief of police to the initial interview.
Yeah.
Well,
I
I mean,
mean, wouldn't
because it's important.
But this one particular gentleman
what'd you
made
say?
it very clear that it was, he used it very often. So that gave concern to us for what would we encounter safety-wise if we went there and he was higher than a kite or whatever.
Exactly. And that's why it's important to ask them. Yeah. And it's important for them to feel comfortable telling you that, because you may decide you don't want to go there.
Right.
Because, yeah, and that may be one that you're just going to skip.
Okay.
Because you want to be safe.
Right.
And if they're high, I had one guy at one point that kept calling me and talking about a herd of horses that kept going through his house, going through the kitchen and everything. And he had said he had proof, and it was a little puddle of water that was on his kitchen table. He was one that was on drugs. So, so I had another one that the lady called me, this has been years, and said that she was seeing demons everywhere. And that every time she took a picture with her phone, and these were the old flip phones, that's how long ago it was, so that the camera was really, the megapixel was very low. And she kept taking pictures, but the only time she saw them were in her pictures. So I had her send some to me. It was just shadows, that she was making into things. And of course, my thing to her was, well, if it's only when you take pictures, don't take pictures. She says it's the demons are having sex on the bed, they're having sex on the wall, they're having sex on the refrigerator. And then I actually got contacted by her adult daughter saying that her mother had just lost her job and had a whole bunch of things going on in her life. And she didn't know me from Adam, the daughter. And she just said, please don't be, leading my mother on or anything. Her mother was in a vulnerable position. Well, one of the things that I require and I ask about is if it's the possibility that there may be some demonic activity require, and that's where you have your nurse or your doctor and different people on your team, Linda, is that I accept that they probably don't want to diagnose stuff either because they're just on the team and they're there if something happens. Is that they need to go get a check, get a wellness check, you know, when you need a medical check, you need a health check, you know, mental check. And she had insurance, so she went to the doctor, and she actually had some stuff physically that was way, way out of skew for her. And by going to the doctor, she that took care of the problem.
Right.
Completely. And I do require that if it's something that may be potentially serious, I do require that they go and have those checks done. Make sure that it's not anything medical or not any, you know, physical or mental that's causing something to go on. Because, you know, as a cop years ago, I learned about vicarious liability. So that can apply here as well. You don't want to leave somebody's house, leaving them in a worse mental state than they were when you got there.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, you don't want to do that at all. And speaking of that, this lady, we went to her house almost right away. We did an interview, and then several days later, Tammy Bricky and I went to her house because she's out here by us, and she had an 11-year-old daughter. But they were saying that her Bible pages were ripped out. She was saying the daughter's Bible was messed up, that they were sleeping together in mother's room, and they woke up and both the Bibles were flung off in different areas. They don't go in the daughter's room. The light bulb keeps going out. And when I first talked to her, she sounded really hysterical, and she wasn't anything like what I had pictured. I expected just this crazy lady. And then she was very articulate and a lot younger when I went to her house. But when I talked to her on the phone, I was trying to calm her because she acted like she was really scared and all freaked out. And as I tried to calm her and go, well, at least it wasn't this, I said like that, all of a sudden it was. I said, well, you don't have any marks, you don't have any bruises. Next thing I know, I get a picture, you know, I get a text showing a picture of her with a bruise. Well, I think she was doing that. And when we went over there, she had left a key under the mat and was gone for the weekend. She didn't want to be in the house when we actually did an interview. I mean, when we did an investigation, but during the interview, she watched all the paranormal shows. Her daughter, I don't remember if she was there or not, but as we did the base readings around, went into the daughter's room. This was really old government housing. So the wiring was very old. The light that was in the daughter's room was actually dangling from a wire from the ceiling, just a plain bulb. And I tried to tell her that you're probably putting too high of a watt bulb in there. It needed to be a lower watt, and that's what causing it to blow. She said it had done it like 27 times. And when we did our EMF, there's 2 closets in the daughter's room. One had the electrical panel. The other one, mom's old-timey TV was up against. And when that TV's on, the EMF was just through the roof coming out of there. And of course, it was the same thing with the electrical panel. So I go over there. The only investigation that I have ever gone to, where Tammy Bricky and I went over there, where we actually brought our weapons in, because I usually have it with me. We brought it in with us because we were bringing in all this equipment, and drug deals were going on in the parking lot while we were doing this. So, and Tammy had been a deputy, so, you know, we were fully aware of where we were, but I knew everybody in the police department there, so we weren't too concerned, but it would take them a while to get there. While we're talking to her, she tells us that the Bibles ended up on either end of the room, and she showed me a little thing she'd pulled out of some magazine. She wouldn't tell me what magazine, and that she had gotten oil from and a box and some other things she had sent off for this thing. It said, go around and use this oil and different things around your house, and then write on a piece of paper what you want gone or what's going on, put it in the box, put it under your pillow, sleep on it, and then as soon as you get up the next morning, put it in $29.95 in an envelope and send it to me, and I'll say a prayer and it'll be gone. So and she did it. It's like, no, no. And but also contacted that told her not to contact, tell us not to. And these Bibles, when we were in there and looked at the Bibles, picture, if it was larger, you can tell there's there's indentations in the photo right above her fingers where you can tell where somebody had grabbed the pages and by possibly tearing out that left an imprint of their hand or fingers. So she did that. She told me that the other thing that happened, the guy she contacted that guaranteed to get rid of everything in the house, 2 guys came to her house and they went through and did the same thing with the oils and water, holy water and everything. They were coming for free, guaranteed they get rid of everything. So they go around the house and the 2-bedroom, they go into her bedroom and they tell her to take her clothes off so they can cleanse her, and said if your daughter had been 12 years old, we would tell her to do the same. She didn't do it, and it was pretty much over there then. And then they demanded $250 to cover the cost of the items they used. Well, she didn't have any money, so she promised to send them $25 in a check. And I tried to find out who they were, where she got them from, because you know what I was going to do? I was going to report them. You never know when you talk to somebody what, she had been victimized. If her child had not been there, there is no telling what would have happened. And I think it probably would not have gone well for her had her daughter not been there, but that was a deterrent for them. And she actually sent them the money. She says, I promised I would. I said, no, they need to be going to jail. So I try to educate people on potential clients, even on doing their due diligence. You need to know where these people are coming from, try to find out about the team. There was another team that was going around in Texas at one point that, I don't know if you heard about this, Linda, or not, that they came in and they would tell the family in order for them to investigate, the family had to leave. They wouldn't do an investigation if the family was there. Well, a couple of families did that and they came home and the whole house would be emptied out.
Yeah, I did.
While they're supposedly, they were stealing. They were stealing everything out of the house. The family go away, the truck would pull up and they'd start loading everything into the truck. So that's something I try to teach people about. And it turned out with this lady, with Who's a Liar, she wanted out of her lease. I feel sorry for the maintenance man. The maintenance man was at the house so many times with things going on that I think she was doing. The last time he went in, he was in the closet looking at the electrical panel, and she actually slammed the door on him and tried to say it was a ghost. And he refused to go back in there while she was there. So they let her out of her lease. But she said if somebody says that it's haunted, they'll let you out of your lease.
Right.
So she called me about a year later and wanted me to do the same thing for her in another city. And I said, no, I'm too busy. Sorry. I'm not going over there, fool me once, fool me twice. And this is one that I like to show that if you look to the water on the side of, they were out there, doing gold, looking for gold on vacation. And this happened to be the family, one of the families I talked about, that they actually had an exorcism at the house twice. So all these people were following her, and she just put up some, vacation photos, and the ripples of the water over there, people decided that they were seeing demons in there. So, you know, when you're interviewing and you're reviewing, you really need to pay attention to everything and make sure that it is as it seems and not something that you just think you're seeing. This one, the picture I showed earlier, I talked about the family that sees spirits, the grandmother and granddaughter. If you see the blurred photo of the one kid in there, that they're kind of like, you know, like that. She took this picture, 35 millimeter, during Christmas. That's her grandson. The whole family was there. And the legs you see are somebody sitting in a chair. But the child that's doing this with the brown hair and the mouth open and looking up is not in the room. So I have the negative and I have the, you know, she gave me the photo and she gave me the negative for it. So I just wish we hadn't had to rush out of there. I didn't find anything while we were there, but I believe her. That was also a house that when I went past the house, I was going around the corner. I was trying to locate the house, and Tammy and I were going around the corner to look at some historical documents because Wells Fargo stagecoach actually ran right through the back of her property, and they had an office maybe 3 blocks away at the most. And I mean, it was all, you know, woods and pastures and stuff. But the town is called, little communities called Prairieville, and they had their office there and a hotel. So it's kind of historic. And if you go out there at night, sometimes you can hear some of the horses running out because a lot of the robberies occurred on their property in the back there. And there's a lot of people she's talking about that just kind of come and go. It's like it's just a way station going through their house, including a little old gentleman that's all hunched over and walks with a cane that everybody in the community has seen. In fact, somebody running and hiding from the cops, well, from deputies, was hiding out there in the woods on her property and saw that little old man walking towards them. And so he figured he got, you know, okay, you know, he knew they were going to find him eventually, and they were all out there looking for him and had everything all sealed off. So he goes to stand up and you know, okay, you caught me. And then the old man disappeared, and he took off to the first deputy he could find and turned himself in. So, so you just, yeah. And there was a house that we looked at before the one we're in now, and it's directly across the street from her. I wanted to buy. So here's some more of the stuff when you're besides interviewing them and researching, trying to decide if you want to investigate or if you are investigating, is to check stories in the local newspaper about the address, or you know, there used to be morgues at the paper, and now a lot of the stuff is still kept on microfiche or something, but it's going to be at the library most likely. Check old newspapers. Every county, well, in Texas, every county has a historical commission. And I used to be on the one in Kaufman County for a number of years, and you can go there. And in almost every city, not all cities, but a lot of the cities also have a historical society. And those are both really good places to find information. If you live around Canton, they have a huge genealogical library over there by the main part of Canton where they have First Monday. And it's not just from the Canton area, it's from all over Texas and some of it from outside Texas. It's amazing all the stuff they have. You can check law enforcement for reports. In Texas, police reports, 911 calls, all that's public information. You can go in and make a Freedom of Information request. They may have a form online if you can't go in person, and ask for any calls between a certain amount of time to that address. Look for names in the local cemetery of people that you may find that maybe had lived there. And then, you know, just talk to other people. But those are all really good ways to add. I mean, if you know somebody that, you know, has ancestry.com, that's a good place to find a lot of stuff. Newspapers.com is also good. They have papers going back into the 1700s that you can research. Say if you're, not a lot of your little bitty papers will be in there, but some of them are. If you're in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, you're going to want to go on and look for the Dallas Morning News, Times Herald, the Fort Worth Star Telegram, the main paper in the county of somewhere, and see. Let's see. I'm gonna skip that other video since I don't even remember which one it is. Okay, we're gonna skip that one. That's a good one on interviewing. That one's on. Let's see. Okay. That one is with Kate Couric, and she's a journalist, but it also really tells you how to, how to interview people, especially adults, how to build your rapport. Kind of went over this information already, so I don't need to go over that again. And we went over that. Well, let's see. We ended up way up there again. Never mind. Let's get down here. Let's see, we're there. Okay. And then here's a thing on when you interview children. And it's real basic stuff on what what I've already gone over. But also be aware when you go into somebody's house, you may go in and realize that you need to call Child Protective Services or even Adult Protective Services when you go into a house. You don't know, but you are responsible for doing that if you find a situation that is very neglectful, dangerous, either to an elderly person or to somebody who is disabled, mentally challenged. And I haven't had to do it yet, thank goodness, but you never know. So you just need to be aware that you may have to do that. And of course, this is the hotline for Texas. It's also the same hotline number if you're in Texas for Adult Protective Services. When you call that number, they'll ask you if it's for about a child or an adult. And that's my thing. I need to get rid of this one. Don't go online if you're interested, that's my book. If you want to find out more information, I've got a full bunch of pages on questions to ask. Contact me about it. Don't buy it from them because the publisher only has ebook available, and the publisher is stealing all the money. They have gone out of business, but they still have all the authors' books up for sale. So if anybody buys it as an ebook, the company is keeping the money, or the person who owned the company, is owned by an individual, is keeping all that money. And I'm trying to get it taken down. Just contact me because I have the books available myself, and I'll send those to somebody. Does anybody have any questions?
There are no questions in the feed.
Yeah, I actually have a couple that I could ask you.
Okay.
That I've been writing down as we've been going. When it comes to the questionnaire, I know you've covered majority of the generic questions that need to be asked, but what are your thoughts on, like, let's just say, do you prefer like having a checklist where it's like yes and no and you just go down? Because like I've seen from different teams in the past 10 years, and some will be like, okay, let's say occult beliefs. And then underneath it, it's like tarot cards, Ouija boards, and all of, and it's just a yes, no checklist. Or do you prefer asking something like, have you used anything in the occult? And if so, explain, like more open-ended versus a yes, no checklist?
Always open-ended. I like to use open-ended. And the questionnaire that's in the back of the book is, I've kind of reworked it since then, because some of the questions are the same questions, just reworded, which is also good too, because they may, if you're trying to determine if they're telling you the truth or not, they may have two different answers. And that would give you something to question them about.
Okay. Yeah, because I know like some questions I've seen on some teams where instead of it being like open-ended and you ask X, Y, and Z, it's they have a list of every like religious belief that you just go down and checklist or, stuff like
Right.
that.
Yeah, and when you do that, I mean, they're not building any rapport, they're not having any give and take, they're not finding out extra information or maybe important information because it's keeping them shut down just to yes, no. And you really want it open-ended because you'd like to know more information. They may have something that isn't on the checklist that they might have told you if it was more of an open-ended question.
Okay. And then the other question I had is there was an investigation that we did out of town earlier this year, and it was 2 days worth, and there was kids involved that were, it was more or less just, go and investigate a place. They weren't concerned about the activity, but it kind of opened my eyes to dealing with kids with their parents, because the one 8-year-old wasn't saying anything. She was just kind of following us around. And then all of a sudden the mom would be like, remember, X, Y, and Z. And then all of a sudden the daughter had a 2-hour story to tell us. So, I mean, I know kids sometimes forget things, but to me, it felt like it was leading. And how would you deal with something like that?
Well, and I've had that. We had that with a 2-year-old that, and the parents do that. That's where the parents want some attention, or they want to be able to go on TV or something. And it I had one with a 2-year-old. The mother called and said that the 2-year-old, they just moved in an apartment her father had lived in it. They didn't have a good relationship. He had sexually assaulted her numerous times when she was a child, but they had kind of reconciled a little bit before he died, and he still lived in the complex when he died, but in a different apartment. And so she had his ashes. The 2-year-old, she said, opened ashes or something, but got into the ashes in the urn. And then since then, there's weird stuff going on in the closet. There's weird things going on in the child's bedroom. I'm trying to remember exactly what she said. There's something above his bed, something in the closet. She had any number of things. And the child wasn't there that day. We were actually back there, I think, the next day. And no, he did come in near the end, and he was what you would expect for what a typical 2-year-old should be. They should be wary of a stranger. If the kids run up, and I know there are kids, because I had one like that there are no such things as strangers. But overall, children aren't going to just run up to total strangers and hug them and hang on them. That's usually a sign that there's some other things going on, and we don't need to go into here, but not necessarily anything, abusive necessarily, but there's things going on. So he was like that the first day. So when we go back the next day, she wanted to just have us to come bless the house, cleanse the house type thing. So we did that. There wasn't anything going on that day when we were there. We went around and made base readings, but she told me that the doctor was telling her to give her 2-year-old like 50 milligrams or more of melatonin.
Oh,
And
no.
she would, well, I know, I think it was more like 100, and that she would take like 500 milligrams. I go, no, I don't, you need to go to a different doctor. Neither one of you, what are you trying to do? And she says, well, if it's just me and him, I don't take it. I said, no, check with another doctor, because I'm not going to give her medical advice. But I just, but I know that's no, you don't ever do that to a 2-year-old. You don't give them that much melatonin. I know a lot of doctors use melatonin, children who have difficulty sleeping, especially if they're a little ADHD, not like that. And so the second day we go back, that child is all over us, super friend. He's going around, going to every place, like grabbing us by the hand and dragging me over to all the places that his mother had said things happened. And he was repeating it like word for word for word what she said, which tells you they've talked about it so many times. A lot of parents sometimes don't realize. They think, oh, that child's asleep. We can talk about it because they're asleep. Well, kids are smarter than people think sometimes, and they hear things they think that they hear, and that was really there, but there wasn't. There really was. So what I did there is I make a little spray bottle with therapeutic grade and lavender in there, and I put something else. I have my recipe, but I put those there so that if you drink it, they cannot get hurt. And I take that and I show them how to, especially the lemon, added to it to help them sleep. And also it's something that they could give to the child. And I explain the difference if you're going to, refill or use, make sure it's not the $3.95 lavender, because that has chemical in it. You need to if you're going to let them have it, have something in there that's safe for them. And you gave them how to, ghosts go away, something like that. And then first I've done beds really well, and everything's been just fine. I had 7 kids, so I had somebody downstairs, I had upstairs, and 6 who was part of the team, and also a former police officer and a journalist. And I interviewed them because of the experience I had interviewing. Well, turned out, and the kids' ages range from like 10. And it was a huge upstairs, and all the bedrooms it's really more open space for everybody. They all slept up there. Well, it turned out that the kids were watching shows like Paranormal Activity, all those that, are appropriate for 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds. On appropriate, movie, because kids, they fed off each other, and somebody's hearing this. I got pulled off of the bed, and they would say, just like they did in Paranormal Activity, something yanked off the bed, and it was just, there was nothing going on there. It was just all hot and no action, so to speak. So there is, you just, I tried to educate, I need to educate a little bit, and the parents feel stupid, but sometimes don't realize what's going on, or how it's going, unless they're just the parents by that bad year, and just try to give them alternatives of what to do. That's really probably about the best way to do that. And another question?
Did we lose her?
Did you have
Maybe.
another?
Oh, I thought we lost you there for a
You
minute.
can't hear me? Oh, no, I said, I thought you had, was that the first question?
Oh, no, those are both my questions, but yeah. I'm just,
Sorry.
I guess one more popped up into my head because I've had it happen in the past, and it actually ended up being a case we didn't take. But what do you do if you have clients who don't want to answer questions? Because like we got into the drug abuse, past family history, and it was, I prefer not to say anything. And it's like, you can't really force them, but
No, you can't force, you can't force them, but you can so explain to them that, if they want you to help them, you kind of need to know these answers that you're not there to report them. You're not there to judge them. These are, and it's confidential. You're not going to tell anybody about that. You know, the only time you say anything really is if there was abuse with elder, you know, with somebody, like children or something that, you know, you needed to, and by law you're supposed to do. But the other stuff, that's their deal, you know.
Right. Okay. Yeah. 'Cause it was mostly about her past history and she just didn't want to dive into it. But a lot of other red flags popped up. So we ended up not taking the case anyway.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Yeah. Usually if there's one, there's maybe others. So,
Okay. So, are there any questions, Linda?
No, there isn't. We just have one person that made the statement that their team did have to call protective services on a case.
so well, I'm glad they did. I mean, that's good because there's a lot of them that even though they know they should, they just don't want to get involved. But, you know, sometimes you just need to.
Right.
Because, yeah, if you take this stuff serious and you are there because of the concern, you need to do that. Bravo to them.
But yeah, I mean, if anybody has any questions, even after we stop this video, feel free to comment in the chat or post on our page. We have a whole bunch of, I know we're running out of time and I don't have time to go over all the different ones, but we collected a whole bunch of different questionnaires from all the different teams that we have associated with Ghost Education 101. So we're always happy to answer questions or give you guys ideas on what questions most teams ask. So don't hesitate asking questions later on. We're always monitoring it and watching it. And since there's no other questions, I guess I'll make a quick announcement before we close this out. But next, let me pull up my notes so I get the date right. The November 18th will be our next presentation at 9 p.m. Eastern. And we have a special guest, Mike Ricksecker, who is the ghost historian and author of A Walk in the Shadows. He will be joining us to discuss shadow people next time. So that is Wednesday, November 18th at 9 p.m. Eastern. We'll be putting up the event page soon so you can set your reminder and get updates and learn more on where you can find Mike and information on what he does. He has some amazing things going on and we can't wait to share his knowledge with you guys. So Martha, if you want to remind everybody where they can find you and how they can get your book.
They can find me on Facebook. And find me on Facebook and you just contact if you want a book so that I can get you a copy. Don't order it online from any business because it's going to be an ebook. And I know there's some teams that actually have told me that they take the book and every time they bring in a new member, they have them read the book, which I thought was kind of neat. That they, and sometimes they take the book with them and ask questions out of the book, but they do have new team members review the book. So
I'm guilty. I've taken the book. I've taken the book with me.
Yeah, hey, Linda.
Yeah, and if you want to know more about any of our educators, especially Martha, Linda, or myself, if you go to our page, Ghost Education 101, under the albums, there's an actual educator's profile album. And it has every educator, our photos, our backgrounds, how you can get in contact with us, and then also our local teams in case any of you need help or have any questions or need assistance locally. And other than that, Linda, do you want to tell everybody where to find you?
You can find us on Facebook under Pit Crew of Oklahoma. And we have a website, pitcrewofok.com or .weebly. Is where you can find us.
Okay, and then again, I'm Heather, and I am the founder of Exploration Paranormal. You can find us on Facebook, either at Exploration Paranormal, or you can find my page where I also share my blog posts and other information, and that's at Dr. Heather Lee, and it's spelled Leigh. Or again, you can find us on our website is explorationparanormal.com. So again, thank you, Martha and Linda, for joining us tonight. And again, if anyone has any questions, feel free to post later on, and we'll make sure we get back to them.
And Martha, will we find you in Jefferson, Texas this weekend?
Oh, yes, you will. I'm going to be in the little room at 3:45 and I'll be talking about Haunted Hill House in Mineral Wells.
Oh,
yep.
Wish I lived closer.
We need to have you back to do a talk on Hill House.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Yeah, the book hopefully will be out sometime in the next month or 2 or 3.
Good.
Perfect. Well, thank you guys again for joining us, and we will see you in 2 weeks.
Good night.